Welcome to WhiskyCast, cask strength conversation featuring news and interviews from the world of whiskey. I'm Mark Gillespie, and this is episode number 1143 for January 4th, 2026. Coming up in a few minutes.
I thought it would be cool to maybe just bring in all Canadian whiskey and start like a Canadian Whisky Week that would allow for there to be tastings and events and celebration across Canada and the rest of the world.
This coming Sunday marks the start of Canadian Whisky Week, which runs this year from January 11th through the 18th. Reece Sims is one of the founders of Canadian Whisky Week, and she'll join us along with co-founder Andrea Fujarczuk to talk all things Canadian whiskey in this week's WhiskyCast In-Depth. I'll taste a couple of their recommendations for underrated Canadian whiskeys in the What I'm Tasting This Week department, and we'll have Behind the Label and much more. The news, such as it is next on this week's WhiskyCast, whiskey's longest-running and most awarded podcast series. Crafted with time, shaped by nature, perfected by generations. From Yamazaki to Hibiki to Hakushu, every drop of House of Suntory whiskey is a reflection of where it comes from. House of Suntory, this is Japanese whiskey.
Enjoy responsibly. Suntory Whiskey Single Malt and Blended Japanese Whiskey. 43% alcohol by volume. Copyright 2025 Suntory Global Spirits Import Company, Chicago, Illinois.
Hey, it's Gabriel from Dewar's Whiskey. Here's a quick tip. Whenever you're pouring great whiskey, especially something like Dewar's 12-year, don't overthink it. All you need is a few glasses and a couple of people worth sharing it with. The rest takes care of itself. Back in a bit.
It was a light week whiskey-wise this week, with most whiskey industry insiders enjoying a dram rather than making news. We do have a couple of stories to report, though, including the latest on the Uncle Nearest receivership. Founder Fawn Weaver has asked a Tennessee federal judge to terminate the receivership, which the court ordered last August after Uncle Nearest and the Nearest Green Distillery defaulted on more than $108 million in bank loans. Weaver told the court sales of Uncle Nearest Tennessee whiskey have declined significantly since the receivership began. The court filing says the perceived financial instability has caused several high-profile retail and hospitality accounts to pull Uncle Nearest off their shelves, and that retailers have canceled or declined planned single-barrel purchases because of concerns about the company's future. Weaver says the only way to turn things around is to give control of the company back to its directors, which include Weaver and her husband Keith. Last month, the judge denied the Weaver's motion for limited relief from the receivership and ruled that only his court-appointed receiver can represent the company in court. The next deadline in the case is January 30th, when the receiver and the bank are scheduled to file a proposed schedule for litigation of the farm credit lawsuit that started the receivership. Now might not seem like the best time to take control of a spirits company, but Sir Dave Lewis took the reins at Diageo this week. The former Tesco CEO takes over at a time when Diageo's share price is down by 33% from a year ago, and the company is selling off non-core assets, such as its Royal Challengers Bangalore Indian cricket team, to make a dent in its $22 billion worth of debt. GLP-1 weight loss drugs such as Wegovy have been blamed for cutbacks in drinking by consumers, and there's about to be a new challenge for the industry. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration has approved a pill version of Wegovy that will go on the market later this month. It's the first GLP-1 drug to be available in pill format instead of a weekly injection, and could be available in Europe later this year. Finally, the Kentucky Bourbon Country auction and celebration is scheduled for President's Day weekend next month, and the second of 12 rare lots for the auction was unveiled this week. It's a private barrel selection from Four Roses, with the barrel selected by master distiller Brent Elliott. Proceeds from the auction will benefit the Bob Woodruff Foundation, which supports veterans, service members, and their families. Other auction lots will be unveiled over the next month. Once again, it's a light news week because of the holidays, but you can keep up on the latest whiskey news all week long at whiskycast.com and in the WhiskyCast community app. Let's open up the 2026 calendar now and see what's happening around the world of whiskey. The Scotch Malt Whisky Society's Canadian chapter will host 2 outturn tastings at the Kensington Wine Market in Calgary, Alberta this Friday night. Wyoming Whiskey hosts a beefsteak and bourbon dinner on Friday night at Mark 179 in New York City. And the Harrow Whiskey Festival gets underway on Friday night in London and runs through Saturday. TasteX, the London food and drink experience, also runs on Friday and Saturday. This one is in London, Ontario. The Kensington Wine Market also has a Gordon and MacPhail tasting on the 13th, a Nico Whiskey tasting on the 14th, and the Whiskey Festival fundraiser on the 15th. There are no Calgary or Edmonton MS Whiskey festivals this year. The Canadian Whisky Awards will be presented on the 15th at the start of the Victoria Whisky Festival, which runs through the 18th in Victoria, British Columbia. And finally, the Aberdeen Whisky Shop in Aberdeen, Scotland hosts a Thompson Brothers Mystery Dram Tasting on the 16th. If you're organizing a whiskey event, let us know about it. We'll add it to the calendars at whiskycast.com and in the WhiskyCast community app.
Throughout the years, Dewar's has created some incredible whiskeys, but our new Dewar's 12-year-old, that one's a personal favorite. It's the kind of scotch that earns praise from the pros, but still feels right at home in the middle of a good night with friends. Every pour opens up with notes of vanilla, toffee, baking spice, and a smooth oak finish. It's rich, it's approachable, and it has a way of bringing people together. Whether it's around the table, the fireplace, or just wherever the night happens to take you. Look, the glasses may hold the whiskey, but the whiskey, that's what holds the moment. Please enjoy responsibly. Copyright 2025. Dewar's is a trademark. Imported by John Dewar & Sons Company, Coral Gables, Florida. Blended Scotch whiskey, 40% alcohol by volume.
WhiskyCast In-Depth is brought to you by Glendalough Irish Whiskey. Lots of events around Canada the next couple of weeks, and there's a natural tie-in to Canadian Whisky Week, which gets underway next Sunday and runs through January 18th. Reece Sims and Andrea Fujarczuk created Canadian Whisky Week last year to celebrate Canadian whiskey. Reece is the director of Vancouver-based Flavor Camp, while Andrea heads up the distilling program at Niagara College in Ontario. Together, they're 2 of the up-and-coming champions of Canadian whiskey, and we spent some time this week on a Zoom call. So what was the impetus for starting Canadian Whisky Week last year and then continuing it this year?
I guess I can kick it off. So last year, or I guess prior to that, I had started running BC Whiskey Weekends, where I was conducting tastings with about 50 different distilleries from BC. But what I found is that obviously that's limiting because I can only be in one place at once. And so I thought it would be cool to maybe just bring in all Canadian whiskey and start like a Canadian Whisky Week that would allow for there to be tastings and events and celebration across Canada and the rest of the world. And so I think last year, just with seeing like Davin's new revised book come out and seeing there, I don't know, maybe being some negative press around Canadian whiskey internationally, I just felt like it's oftentimes misunderstood, which I know Andrea has a lot to say on that. And so I thought it would be a good time to kind of launch a Canadian Whisky Week that happened in conjunction with when the Canadian Whisky Awards occur, and just have a time outside of Canada Day where it's celebrated and people are discovering and enjoying more than just the cheap blends that I think Canada is definitely known for internationally.
What all will be going on during this year's Canadian Whisky Week? You've evolved it to include a bunch of different events.
Yes. Andrea, do you want to talk about it?
We have some in-person tastings. I'm doing one at Niagara College, actually, and we are featuring only Niagara whiskeys, which I'm very excited about. And Reece was just talking about how we're not always celebrating Canadian whiskey. And despite the fact that we have quite a whiskey region here in Niagara, we actually have never done a full Niagara whiskey tasting. It's never been done before, to my knowledge. And how sad is that? It's something that we just need to focus more on on becoming better brand ambassadors. We as Canadians are way too humble. And so just this opportunity to join together, whether it's in person for some of these tastings or online, which I know Reece will talk about this a little bit more in depth. We are running what is going to be, to our knowledge, the largest online Canadian whiskey tasting.
Yeah, so I'm really excited. Canadian Whisky Week is happening January 11th is the kickoff until the 18th. And so in order to be able to get everybody across the country involved, Andrea and I and Davin and a few, well, there's like 15 of us that are all collaboratively involved in running this, but we're running like an online national tasting across Canada. And so it actually sold out, which I'm so excited about. And there's going to be at least 120 people attending and participating in tasting the 8 different distilleries' products alongside anybody else that wants to join internationally. You're welcome to be part of the process and kind of see all these amazing distilleries present their products. And I don't think any of them are actual blends. So that's exciting too. And they're all premium price point products. And so we're really going to be exploring everything from like peated single malts that use Washington peat to wheated rye whiskeys to double oak aged ryes and tons of other products as well. So it's going to be great. In addition to that, there's also in-person tastings happening in Calgary and Victoria this year. So we definitely have a presence across BC, Alberta, and Ontario with in-person tastings. And then this national tasting has people that have purchased tickets for it from everywhere from Victoria on the complete West Coast to Prince Edward Island, actually on the complete East Coast. So it's going to be amazing.
Tell me about go ahead, Andrea.
I was going to say, this to me really proves that people really do want to learn about Canadian whiskey. And I love the way that it's been organized. It's not one person dictating all the different whiskeys. Reece has actually allocated different people across Canada for them who work in the industry, for them to pick out their favorite Canadian whiskeys and to showcase it. So it's not one person saying this is what we're all going to taste, but we're tasting a variety of different flavors. And that's what I think makes Canadian whiskey so special, actually, is that we are so diverse. So it is exciting to me that the entire country is so enthusiastic about learning about our products.
Yeah, I'm getting goosebumps talking about it right now. I'm so excited.
Tell me about the My Canadian Pour campaign.
Yeah, so I think we're kind of starting small. This is only the second year that the Canadian Whisky Week is happening. And so obviously we don't want just Canadians to be involved. We want everybody from the US and abroad internationally to be able to participate in the celebration. And so the My Canadian Pour, it's just a hashtag, but essentially we're just encouraging people to either post a Canadian whiskey that they're trying that week, a cocktail using a Canadian whiskey, any fun Canadian whiskey facts that they want to share, any historical things for any of the writers that are part of kind of our collaborative group if they want to post their articles that they've written about Canadian whiskey. So it's all about collaboration, education, and fun from not just Canadians.
Andrea, tell me about your PhD project that looks into the awareness around Canadian whiskey and exploring values and country of origin and all that. Explain what you're doing.
So this is very much so a labor of love for me. I very much so got irritated because my favorite class to teach is sensory analysis. And every week we would have these beautiful blind tastings of different spirits. And you could see the classrooms just come alive when I would talk about Japanese whiskeys or bourbons or scotches. And for some reason, whenever it came to Canadian whiskeys, you could just feel the whole room like die down. And I really started to take it personal because these were mostly Canadian students. And why weren't they getting excited about their home country's whiskey? And they all loved whiskey. So that really enticed me to try to create change. And the only way that I knew how to create change was to pursue a doctorate at Heriot-Watt. And when I got accepted, I kind of went, oh, I think I actually need to do this now. So I started understanding this concept called collective reputation. And it's essentially this cross between brand and place. And it's this idea of creating value based on where a product is from, in this case, obviously whiskey. And from my experience, it's actually something that's continuously overlooked. And let's be honest, the brand of Canadian whiskey is not always the highest regarded brand. So think of it like a shared grade across everybody in the country. And we all have to share this grade regardless of what it is. And it creates something called a reputational pyramid. On the base, you have where a product is from, the country itself. Then you've got in the mid set, you've got the region, and then on tip, you've got the brand. And the issue with this is if the country's reputation, being the base of the pyramid, is actually not premium. In this case, we've got like a smooth light whiskey. The brand on the top actually has to work twice as hard to justify to be taken seriously. And after years of researching, I actually found out what I'm calling the Canadian whiskey paradox. And we have two stark contrasting types of production right now. On one hand, we've got our historical style. We've got light, smooth, easy drinking whiskey, and we're the best of the world at doing that. And we produce it at a really massive scale, and that's great. And it's become synonymous with mixing whiskey. But then afterwards, you also add our flavored whiskeys into that. And that's now allocating up to 50% of Canadian whiskey sold in the US. So what we're telling people is that Canadian whiskey is not a sipping whiskey. And that's an extrinsic cue that we need to learn to see whether we can control or not. And then on the other hand, we've got an incredible movement of artisan distillers. You've got people like Sons of Vancouver and Macaloni's and True Brewers and Anoka who are making these bold world-class whiskeys. But when a consumer sits at the liquor store, they see the same Canadian whiskey and on the label, and we don't have categories like the US. So they get confused. Mm-hmm. They're thinking, is this a $30 mixer or a $150 masterpiece? And the most fascinating part of my research actually is that I've realized at the end of the day, there's actually a symbiotic relationship between the large producers and the small producers, because we often put the big whiskey producers against the craft whiskey producers, but they actually need each other to thrive for the Canadian whiskey industry to function. The large scale distilleries continue to keep us top of mind and keep us relevant. And that's incredibly important. They also have the ability to hold massive stock of old aged products. So you can see these massive producers putting out 30, 40, 50-year-old statements, which the artisanal distillers cannot do. We don't have that function. And then on the other hand, you've got the artisanal distillers who are providing innovation and that halo effect. So they really are to have the same whole, and we can try and bridge that gap between them, and hopefully the entire category wins. So basically, we're coming down to the fact of, can we raise that perceived value as Canadians? And that's where trademark certifications come in. I know you just talked to this Estate Whiskey Alliance a few weeks ago, and they're doing something similar. In their situation, they're saying, okay, it has to be estate grown. They have certain regulations. And the thing is that consumers can see that brand, Estate Whiskey Alliance, and they know that they can trust it. Versus we have a problem where, Canadian artisanal distillers make a world-class product that's from 100% rye whiskey. The consumer could think easily that it's actually made from 100% corn and rye is added as flavoring. So there's a bit of trust that's broken there. And we want to make sure that we can allow these artisanal distillers to level up the entire reputation of the country. So as you probably know, right now, we have a bit of a wild west when it comes to regulations. You can take a label of rye whiskey in Canada without actually having any rye in it. And we also have the 9.09 rule. And those regulations are not necessarily bad. It actually offers creative freedom and tax advantages. But also in a luxury market, authenticity is the new currency. And that's where a certification trademark could act as a third-party seal of truth. It really could move us from like marketing speak to verified truth as distillers. And I know that I can do all this research, but what actually needs to happen in order for this to function is it needs to come from the producers. They need to want to see this change. Are some of them listening? Yes. Do they see value? Absolutely. But I think we're so caught up in the drama of Canadian whiskey regulations that people are no longer looking at what's actually in the bottle. And that's where we want to start talking about changing the narrative from what has happened to what is currently going on. Because I don't feel that a lot of these producers are getting the recognition they deserve based on their country of origin. And that you look at what's happening on the world stage right now. We've got Black Fox Farm and Distillery, who was named 2025 IWSC Worldwide Producer of the Year. I mean, and they're making these crazy whiskeys in minus 40 degrees Celsius in the prairies. And then you've got Dr. Don Livermore, who's won Master Blender of the Year, and Eau Claire Distillery, who's won a platinum at San Francisco. So at the end of the day, it's more so about educating people about what we are making and the potential, and trying to encourage them to learn more about the product and learn more about Canadian whiskey. And I do hope that ultimately my doctorate means something and does create that change.
Yeah, and
Good
it definitely
luck.
ties into us doing like a Canadian Whiskey Week and Andrea and I working together. I think there's like she is obviously at the forefront of the research side of things, but it has to be a community like whiskey fabric effort in order to make change. And there's a lot of internal challenges within Canada too, with these bigger distilleries that are doing the cheaper blended products that Canada is known for. There's not really an incentive for them to lobby to change like the laws. And so by creating a trademark or an organization or some sort of collective reputation that's not tied to law, kind of like with Japan and the JSLMA, what they did with creating their own rules for their trade organization to define what Japanese whiskey is. Like, I think a lot of people have that confused that that's law, and it's not actually. It's an optional opt-in for the organizations or the distilleries that are part of it. But we definitely need something like that here. But some of the challenges are it's been a rough year, and distilleries, especially craft, don't have a lot of budget or time or marketing dollars to be able to invest in making this happen. So I think Andrea and I are in kind of interesting positions where we're independents that are really passionate about the industry and have this ability to, on a kind of unbiased scale, help to work with producers to try and make change happen. So.
And also, we live halfway across the country for each other. We actually met online, and we more or less had the same goals. Mm-hmm. And we come at it from different perspectives. And I'm obviously more like educational and research, and she's much more involved in flavor tastings and flavor profile and publishing and media. But I think that this needs to be a movement that we all work together. And I think that's part of what Canadian Whiskey Week is creating more of this national community, but also encouraging other people to like, show us your pours, right? What's your favorite Canadian whiskey? And
have these deeper conversations as well, right?
Yeah.
Canadian whiskey has really gotten a lot of attention this year within Canada because of the American boycotts of the boycotts of American whiskeys. Is that a good thing for Canadian whiskey? Was Canadian whiskey able to capitalize on that?
I think it has been really good for craft distillers. So Andrea can probably speak more to this, but the LCBO, because they are one of the largest purchasing powers in terms of alcohol purchasing, they haven't been carrying American products and have been bringing in all of these craft distillers products that never even had a chance previously. So it's helping the local distillers to do more volume in British Columbia and Ontario in particular. I think with the tariffs, there are some provinces such as Ontario and BC that aren't bringing in American products at the moment still, but there are other ones. So I live in Alberta, and there are American products on the shelf here. So it depends province to province, which is also kind of complicated in Canada, is that it's a provincial matter, alcohol. And so again, it makes it like more complicated because being able to lobby together to change things requires like province by province buy-in.
Andrea?
Yeah, and keep in mind, like, I'm located in Ontario. If I really want to order bourbon, I can order it in. I can find a way. But what's happening with the consumers is that a lot of people who their go-to was always bourbon, they're looking for different alternatives. And a lot of craft producers are like, okay, how can I take this opportunity to blend something that might appeal to that bourbon consumer instead? And don't forget that we have that ability to blend after distillation, after oak aging. So we have this unique blending technique that allows Dr. Don to go into his, see all of his barrels and say that one, that one, that one, and put something together that might challenge, the bourbon market. So it is really broadening a lot of people's horizons. They're looking at making cocktails a little bit differently. They're looking at buying more Canadian rye whiskeys as well. And hopefully that continues on, because once people have explored different brands and they fall in love with them, they tend to be loyal as well. So we're hoping that kind of sticks on even after these issues have been resolved.
I think on that note as well, we're definitely seeing more kind of like non-bourbon bourbon releases from craft distilleries. Like there's some very cheeky ones like Okanagan Spirits. This came out long before now, but they had the BRBN, which is 100% corn, I believe, for their original edition. And then Spirit in Niagara has their like bourbon, spelled like burr as in it's very cold there. And there's quite a few other distilleries. Like there's a few in Calgary that also have their takes on like a high corn with rye and malt secondary grain, aged in virgin oak styles of bourbon alternatives. That being said, I would say they're not going to necessarily replace it and they don't taste the exact same, but I think it's really harnessed some creativity in the craft market to pivot to take advantage of this extra shelf space that is available in a lot of provinces right now.
Andrea, I want to get you to talk about the distilling program at Niagara College too, because we often get emails from people saying, "Where can I study distilling?" And Niagara College was not on my radar until now. So let's get it on the radar of some folks.
I'm a full-time professor at Niagara College where we offer an 8-month program. And it is all things distilling, everything from legal and regulatory environment to sensory analysis, quantitative spirit analysis. We go through all these different units together, and we usually have very small cohorts. The joy of it is that when you come in, you can know absolutely nothing and you can leave fully knowing how to function in a distillery. We do have some students who come in thinking they're going to leave as master blenders or master distillers, and we really have to tame some of those expectations down. But you get to learn from David Dixon, who is our head distiller in the physical distillery that is also a commercial distillery, who is a former head of Dillon's Distillery, located in Niagara-on-the-Lake. We also have an on-site brewery. We also have an on-site winery. So the distillery is located right next to the vineyards, which is even cooler because you can actually take some of those grapes and actually distill them to make whatever you want to make with it later. And we also have an on-site greenhouse, which means that we can actually retrieve botanicals on site and spirit on site. So we have one of the only facilities really that I know that can do an estate gin. So you get to learn from other students and other programs. You get to learn from different professors who have decades of experience in the industry. And it's very exciting to see where some of our grads are going, whether they're staying locally in Canada or they're going abroad. But now I think we've only been doing this for about 7 years, but now we're starting to see some of our grads really become head distillers in some really reputable places. So it's an exciting time for us.
It's very cool. I got to tour it this summer with Andrea, and it's very hands-on there. And one of the things you didn't mention is that their end-year projects are actually saleable. So they create a product that is actually sold at Niagara Distillery or people can purchase online. And so there was like a really interesting stout cask aged rye that came out that we got to try when we were there. But they do more than just whiskey. Like they had an incredible Rosso vermouth that we got to try and a bunch of other products. So, and they also have like an amazing culinary program at Niagara College as well. So it's like hyper creative and arts focused at the college in general.
It's really quite interesting to see what the students come in with, what their goals are, and then to see them apply it to an actual product at the end that goes to the actual on-site commercial winery and distillery is so cool and so rewarding actually as a professor. So you see little parts of these culinary students who have graduated and then come into the distilling program and create vermouths like Reece was saying, because they just have this background in botanicals that they actually love it. And every cohort is different, every student is different, and they often want to work on different projects. So we have such a variety of products at the end of the day.
I think that about does it. No.
We could keep talking for hours.
I hope
let me tell you.
No, I want to give a shout out to our good friend Davin DeCurgamo. Davin has really sort of played a key role. And in fact, most years he would have been doing this interview until now, our annual interview on the state of Canadian whiskey. But let's put Davin in perspective with other whiskey writers and sort of the Canadian whiskey experts.
Yeah, I mean, he's prolific and like the grandfather of Canadian whiskey. I swear. Like I remember I met him actually for the first time at Tales of the Cocktail in 2016 and was so excited. I got his autograph and photo and he just thought I was like insane. And then since then, flash forward almost 10 years, he's been such an amazing unofficial mentor, I guess, and just really encouraging of both of us with kind of figuring out what our niches are and the way in which we communicate about Canadian whiskey and kind of are trying to come up a little bit more to maybe potentially take over where he's leaving off in terms of being sort of independent communicators about and like passionate enthusiasts for the industry. So
he really has dedicated so much of his life to Canadian whiskey, but also the people in it, that if he sees potential in you, you know, you can send him a text and he'll call you back within a few hours and walk you through it. And he is so, what I love about him is his honesty as well, because he's had so many years of experience in the industry and knows what works. Yeah, decades, I should say. I didn't want to age him too much. But he'll tell you the honest truth. Is that going to work? Is that not going to work? Is this worth your energy? And what I love about him is that so many people in this industry look at Davin as their mentor, and from all different backgrounds, all different places around the world. And he doesn't say no to anybody because he believes in the category so much that he just wants to see it grow. And it's so funny because almost every time I talk to him, he tells me how amazing Reece is. And I'm like, I know, Reece is incredible.
Likewise,
yeah.
when I talk to him.
Yeah. So it is quite a positive environment, especially when it comes to, you know, working on some of my research. But the industry owes him a lot. And we also have another giant retiring simultaneously.
I know, Bill.
Yeah, we've got Bill from 40 Creek also, who just retired about a week ago, I would guess. So that's also, these are big losses for us, but like they've got to go on and live their lives. So
Davin is co-hosting the big online tasting to kick off Canadian Whiskey Week with me, and him as well as Alex Hammer, who's kind of taking over for him and has also been instrumental in like growing especially the BC craft industry. They're honorary chairs for Canadian Whiskey Week because we really value their mentorship and knowledge and just everything that they are doing and have done to help grow this industry. So we're trying to be hyper collaborative.
Let's close this out with a couple of picks. I want each of you to give me a Canadian whiskey that you think is underrated, that deserves more attention, that it's not getting enough love.
Oh, man. I gotta think. I feel like, because we already picked for our tasting, but they are getting enough love. But that's, I think, why we love them. I need a second to think about this. I would say the most exciting thing I've tried this year was Spirit in Niagara's bourbon. And I keep talking about it because, for one, it's like $45 a bottle. So it's Canadian. So that's like 2 cents American. But it's really inexpensive. They're not a very well-known distillery as well. And they have they're so creative and focusing on different sustainability initiatives, like using different types of fruit that wouldn't have otherwise been used to make these incredible vodkas. But all of their whiskey line that was created by Josh, who also has his own whiskey, which maybe Andrea wants to talk about, are amazing. It was the closest to a bourbon that I've tried that's a Canadian whiskey ever, bar none.
Yeah, it was really cool, actually. Reece and I had the pleasure of we actually decided that because no one else has really done an in-depth Canadian whiskey tour. We put together our own Niagara whiskey tour. So we both had the pleasure of tasting that together. And we tasted another one that I'm going to mention is the ginger beer cask from Gretzky's, which is so phenomenal and so
unique.
So yeah, it's unique and it's so innovative, and it's done by Tim, who used to be at Gretzky's, who's actually now at Dillon's. So unfortunately for him, he didn't get to see the release, but I don't feel like it got the proper attention that it did because of its spicy characteristics and its drinkability and its depth. And it's incredible flavor profile, to be honest with you. So I love that we have these unique products that are coming out that I'm not seeing in the market anywhere else. So I do recommend getting a hold of that to anyone if they can.
Yeah, there's one more too that's relatively new. So Josh Beach, or that's his last name, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I always mix it up. But he is the current master distiller at Spirit in Niagara, and he released his own rye whiskey called Harris Beach Rye. And again, because of the tariffs, it's actually in the LCBOs now, which is amazing. But it's one of the most exciting ryes I've definitely tried that's new this year. So I feel like there's a lot of new and exciting things coming out of Ontario, whereas over the last 10 years, BC has really been kind of the center of craft. And I don't know, seeing a lot more craft stuff, great stuff coming out of Ontario. So there'll be a battle of the East versus West soon, I'm sure.
And I think that's what makes the industry so exciting is that because we are so vast, we have very different things happening from one coast to the other. And that doesn't include some, like, there's a lot of other provinces, like you've got 2 brewers up in the Yukon, which is just kind of by themselves, but they make amazing stuff.
Yeah, Bob is incredible.
It's part of what makes it challenging to say, like, if somebody goes, what's happening in the Canadian distilling industry? I'm like, well, where do
what
I
province?
begin?
Yeah. What
But
style?
then it's also part of the charm because there's so many things happening. So it's a tough question. We could probably go on for a while, but we'll maybe keep it at that for now.
Yeah, I think like the challenges are we only have one category of whiskey. It's Canadian whiskey, Canadian rye whiskey, or rye whiskey. They're all synonymous under our law, for one. For two, Canada is the second largest country geographically in the world. So we have so many different microclimates that are happening. So the aging in Vancouver, where it's very mild, is completely different from Niagara, where it gets cold, which is completely different from Calgary, which we are at a higher altitude and have things like Chinooks that are drastically changing the weather patterns constantly. So I think it's really exciting. The kind of, again, transparency is key, as Andrea was saying, and the more and more storytelling we're able to convey to show what makes each province's and each city's whiskey unique is like really exciting in my opinion. So.
Yeah, and it's one of these things that these other countries or regions are looking to display, like consistent flavor in their product. And that's something we will never have. But that's okay too, because we want to show our diversity and what we are able to do. And I think we kind of are underestimated in that way.
That's Canada. Underestimated, but we're scrappy.
Yeah, we are.
And we're like a melting pot of a whole bunch of different people and styles and inspirations and backgrounds and such. So,
and it's about time we celebrated it, right?
Right. You'll find a link to the Canadian Whisky Week website in the show notes for this episode at whiskycast.com. And thanks to Reece Sims and Andrea Fujarczuk for joining us this week on WhiskyCast In-Depth. It's brought to you by Glendalough Irish Whiskey.
Our story begins in the wilds of County Wicklow, the Garden of Ireland, a place where nature moves slowly and meaningfully. Some whiskies blend in. Glendalough Double Barrel stands apart. I'm Rowdy Rooney, head distiller here at Glendalough, and I personally oversee our whiskey making process from start to finish. We do things slowly, and we do them right. We start with a smooth, single-grain Irish whiskey. We age it in flame-charred American oak for soft vanilla and a honeyed depth. Then we finish it in Oloroso casks from a small bodega in Spain. Casks we season and ship ourselves to make sure the wood is still alive with character when it arrives. That kind of care gives Glendalough Double Barrel its rich layers of dried fruit, warm spice and signature smoothness. This is a whiskey at its own pace, and it's worth every second. This is Glendalough Double Barrel, crafted to stand apart.
Let's start off the What I'm Tasting This Week department with two of the whiskeys Reece and Andrea mentioned at the end of our chat, starting with the Wayne Gretzky Distillery's Ginger Beer Cask Rye. Former master distiller Tim Wilson brewed his own ginger beer to season ex-bourbon casks, which were then used to finish the distillery's 100% rye. It's a 7-year-old whiskey bottled at 50% ABV, and the nose has touches of ginger ale, baking spices, dried fruits, and a hint of honey. The taste is dominated by ginger root, along with clove, cinnamon, and allspice notes, balanced by dried fruits and honey. The finish is long with a heavy ginger root influence and a touch of cinnamon. It's an interesting experiment, and I'm scoring the Wayne Gretzky Craftsmanship Series Ginger Beer Cask Rye a 92. Next up, the Harris Beach Spirits Rye 51. This one is bottled at 45% ABV, and the nose has touches of orange peel, toasted coconut, caramel candy, apricots, and vanilla. The taste has notes of baked oranges, apricots, figs, dates, and a slow onset of baking spices leading into a spicy finish. It's a very nice whiskey. I'm scoring the Harris Beach Rye 51 a 93. Reece and Andrea mentioned two brewers in Whitehorse, Yukon, and it's one of my favorite Canadian distilleries. The Two Brewers Release 48 single malt is bottled at 43% ABV, and the nose has touches of creme caramel, lemon custard, dried fruits, and a nice maltiness. The taste is full of barley sugar, lemon zest, a slow onset of allspice, honey, and vanilla, and the finish is long and malty with a kick of spice. I'm scoring the Two Brewers Release 48 single malt a 92. And finally, Sons of Vancouver Distillery shocked the Canadian whiskey world a couple of years ago when one of its whiskeys won Canadian Whisky of the Year honors. Menthol and Evergreen is the third release in their Realms of Rye series, and it's bottled at cask strength, 59.6% ABV. The nose has touches of pine needles, eucalyptus, chocolate mint, and a hint of dill. The taste is thick and chewy with baking spices, freshly cut lumber, pine needles, dark chocolate, and a hint of honey, leading into a long, spicy finish. I'm scoring Menthol and Evergreen from Sons of Vancouver Distillery a 93. Now, a brief explanation of how I just happened to have these whiskeys available to taste. Every year I judge in the Canadian Whisky Awards, but this year my samples were held up in customs until it was too late to judge them in time for the deadline. Alex Hamer runs the awards and kindly gave me the key to the numbered samples so that I could pull a few for this segment. Don't take this as any clue to the winners, though. I'll be adding these whiskeys to our searchable list of more than 3,900 different whiskeys from all over the world. Check it out this week at WhiskyCast.com. Japanese whiskey began with Shinjiro Tori's vision to reflect the true nature and spirit of Japan. The House of Suntory was founded on these principles, guided by generations of craftsmanship that have transformed time, nature, and precision into something greater than the sum of its parts. Pure waters from the mountains of Hakushu, Mizunara oak shaped by decades of patience, a blending philosophy rooted in harmony. These aren't just techniques, they're a way of thinking, a quiet pursuit of balance and depth. From Yamazaki to Hakushu to Hibiki, every whiskey is a reflection of where it comes from and the hands that shape it. House of Suntory, the founding house of Japanese whiskey.
Enjoy responsibly. Suntory Whiskey Single Malt and Blended Japanese Whiskey. 43% alcohol by volume. Copyright 2025 Suntory Global Spirits Import Company, Chicago, Illinois.
Let's open up the inbox now and see what people are talking about in our community segment. Every year I ask you to share your final dram of the year and your first dram of the new year with us in the WhiskyCast community app and on social media. And this year you stepped up nicely. We had too many drams to mention them all here, but just a few of them. Colin from Ottawa, Ontario, picked the Two Brewers Release 42 for his final dram of 2025, and Lagavulin 16 for the first dram of 2026. Jeff 6191 chose the Ardnaho inaugural release for the last dram of the year. Whiskey Mikey 79 picked the new Highland Park Heather cask strength single malt for the final dram, and Jack Daniels Sinatra Select for his first dram of the new year. Brian Redden went with a couple of Irish whiskies. Middleton Dergailloch Kylebeg Wood for the final dram of 2025, and Killoan Barrentuil released one for that first dram of 2026. Chardul, the dram voyager, picked the Yamazaki peated malt Spanish oak for the final dram, and Edradauer Balakin SFTC 10-year-old virgin oak cask for the first dram of 2026. For the record, my final dram of 2025 was a 50-year-old Glen Grant cask sample given to me by legendary distillery manager Dennis Malcolm back in 2015. And my first dram of 2026 was a 1964 North of Scotland distillery single grain sample. Both came from a stash of samples I keep for special occasions. Hope you got a chance to listen to our special midweek end-of-the-year episode that dropped on Wednesday. We took a look back at some of the key stories of 2025, and I shared some predictions for 2026. In that episode, Westward Whiskey CEO Tom Mooney referred to the current shakeout among craft distillers as, quote, creative destruction. Noel Harity posted in the app, okay, creative destruction is a new term for me. If you have a comment, question, or suggestion to share with whiskey lovers around the world, download the free WhiskyCast community app from your app store and join the conversation. You can also find us on social media. Just look for WhiskyCast on X, Blue Sky, Threads, Instagram, and Facebook. Our email address is comments@whiskycast.com. Let's close out the show now with Behind the Label, our look at the history, science, and people who make whiskey unique. Andrea Fujarczuk referred to the 9.09% rule that is unique to Canadian whiskey, and it's worth explaining just what that rule means. In a nutshell, it allows distillers to add up to 9.09% of other spirits, or 1/11th, that have been aged for at least 2 years, while still selling the final product as Canadian Whisky. Common additives include bourbon, sherry, port, or fruit brandies, usually from the U.S. That's because there's a provision in the U.S. tax code that gives tax credits to foreign producers who include American-made spirits in their products. Since the U.S. is the largest market for Canadian whiskey, distillers often take advantage of that tax loophole for their export products. Here's an example. Suntory Global Spirits used to sell Alberta Premium Dark Horse in Canada and branded it as Alberta Rye Dark Batch in the U.S. The blend included 8% bourbon and 1% Oloroso sherry to give the final whiskey more flavor and complexity. There's no requirement that these additives be listed on the label, and they don't count when figuring an age statement for the whiskey, and for that reason purists have criticized the rule. I won't take a stand on whether it makes sense or not, but it's worth keeping in the back of your mind whenever self-proclaimed critics start bashing Canadian whiskeys. If you have something you'd like us to look at on an upcoming episode, just get in touch with us. That's all for this episode of WhiskyCast. You'll find links for the stories in this episode in our show notes at whiskycast.com. That's also where you'll find the latest whiskey news, my tasting notes, the calendar of events, the whiskey photo of the week, and, of course, a complete archive of past episodes going all the way back to 2005. Get in touch with us, download the free WhiskyCast community app from your app store, or find us on social media. We're on Blue Sky, X, Threads, Instagram, and Facebook at WhiskyCast. The email address, comments@whiskycast.com.
There's something special about opening a bottle of Dewar's 12-year with the people who matter most. It brings out the stories, the laughter, and the kind of moments you don't plan, but never forget. Built on tradition, made for right now, and best when shared. Dewar's 12-year-old.
Crafted with time, shaped by nature, perfected by generations. From Yamazaki to Hibiki to Hakushu, every drop of House of Suntory whiskey is a reflection of where it comes from. House of Suntory, this is Japanese whiskey.
Enjoy responsibly. Suntory Whiskey Single Malt and Blended Japanese Whiskey. 43% alcohol by volume. Copyright 2025 Suntory Global Spirits Import Company, Chicago, Illinois.
WhiskyCast is a production of Cask Strength Media, copyright 2026, and comes to you from the charming, yet regrettably dry town of Haddonfield, New Jersey. I'm Mark Gillespie, reminding you that when you drink, please drink responsibly. Thanks for listening, and have a happy new year.